It may be better suited to title this video, Why Africans Never Sought to Conquer the World, because some African people did invade outside the continent. The Egyptians invaded the Levant region, the Abyssinians invaded Yemen, and the Berbers, along with conscripted soldiers originating further south, invaded southern Europe. We'll discuss the circumstances of those developments later. I guess a useful distillation in question form would be to ask, with all the ethnic groups in Africa, why did so few develop imperial ambition to expand outside of the continent? Let's explore that question today. What up, African world? It's Home Team here, and welcome back to another video of African history, culture, and worldview. By supporting this channel on Patreon, you're helping in the creation of these videos and contributing to this content. The link to Patreon is in the description box below. To begin, this video is opinion-based. It's an early stage theory that is subject to change or correction. The theory will be based on historical facts, but it's possible for others to draw different conclusions based on said facts. Moreover, this video is not saying that all the facts mentioned to explain the titled premise are unique to African history. However, the significance is that the facts may have expressed itself with superior intensity on the African continent, thereby ostensibly affirming the premise. Also, our focus will primarily be on West and Central Africa, but other regions will be mentioned as well, so please keep this context in mind. So there were certainly moments in African history where African people did invade regions outside of the African continent. Despite this reality, there seems to be a minor caveat. The Egyptians invaded the Middle East, but according to one interpretation, they did so in a reactionary way, in order to secure their borders from northerners who invaded them first. The idea of permanent imperial occupation was not the goal. The Abyssinian invasion of Yemen was inspired by religious intervention, a religion not indigenous to the African continent. Same with the Moorish invasion of Europe. Africans were mobilized not by local institutions, but by a foreign import calling for action. A less ambiguous example would probably be the Carthaginian invasion of Spain and Italy. Africans did invade peoples outside of the African continent. But why so few indigenous, expansive empires, free of foreign prompt? Empires like, say, Greece, Rome, Persia, or the Mongols? Well, aside from the fact that imperial success is no simple thing, the pursuit of conquering the world is not an African pursuit, nor is it an African question. What do I mean? Africans may not have pursued an expansive invasion of the world because of their concept of power. It seems as though the African concept of power was quite distinct. According to one African philosophical thought, the meaning of power for African people meant closeness to the divine. Power is conceived by the African as something pertaining to the divine. Now we have to take caution because this cannot be monolithically applied to all Africans throughout all time. But it is a useful concept for sizable portions of the continent, especially in West and Central Africa. Philosopher Innocent Onyiwenyi tells us that there was a lot of confusion during colonialism because individuals with college degrees were considered the wise ones, worthy of leadership according to a colonial model. This was antithetical to African tradition, which held that the eldest in the community were the sagacious ones because of their closeness to divinity, aka God and the ancestors. An important example is demonstrated by scholar Chancellor Williams. A European explorer became upset at an African king in East Africa because he had to wait 2 weeks before he can get an audience with him. The explorer assumed the king had the authority like in other places around the world. However, according to scholar Chancellor Williams, that simply was not the case. The explorer would have been surprised to know that, number one, king in Africa meant something entirely different from what it meant in Europe and Asia. Number two, that this black king, far from putting on airs, did not have the right to receive them, even socially, without the presence of at least 3 senior elders. Those wise elders were not present at the time. This quasi-democratic display instantiates how power was conceptualized in some regions throughout Africa. In places like Europe, Asia, or the Middle East, the concept of power seemed to be more aligned with land ownership, because if you control the land, you control the people. However, in some parts of the continent, if you control the divine, you control the people. Different expression, yet same goal. Thus, land expansion instinctively would not be the principal goal of an African ruler in pursuit of power. Another reason why Africans may not have pursued an expansive invasion of the world was because of its abundance of a non-renewable natural resource, gold. One of the principal reasons why Europeans invaded the New World was because of their pursuit of a non-renewable natural resource. The West's conquest of the New World was a many-faceted enterprise. Gold, sugar, religion, and innumerable other reasons motivated Europe's invasion of the Americas, beginning in the late 15th century. The African continent seemed to have a plethora of desirable resources. West Africa in particular demonstrated its wealth on multiple occasions throughout the literature. One Arab writer calling the Wagadu or Ghana Empire, and I quote, the richest gold mine on earth. In the first millennium CE, the demand for African copper, iron, and gold increased. The abundance of gold on the African continent was established, especially with the rise of Mansa Musa in the 14th century. But additionally, iron was coveted as well, and West Africans knew that their production of iron was superior to that imported from elsewhere. Iron produced in many parts of Africa for a long time remained superior in quality to unforged raw iron from Europe. West Africans were well aware of the excellence of their iron, as we see in their responses to the availability of iron coming from Europe in the 15th to 18th centuries CE. Not only did Africans prefer the product of their own smelters and smiths in actual toolmaking, but the Portuguese transported it around the coast to Guinea and Senegal to exchange for other products. The proliferation of valuable resources in West Africa, along with their keen awareness of it, could have contributed to their disinterest in expansion for reasons that may have motivated traditional imperialist states, like say the Spanish. In other words, many West and Central Africans did not have to look overseas to acquire wealth or natural resources. One critical component of nations that sought to expand and conquer is the religious stimulant. Religions such as Islam, Buddhism, and Christianity, all religions founded outside of the African continent, concerned itself with universal relevance. Scholar Yuval Harari proposes that a given religion must contain certain elements in order to encourage a large expanse of territory. First, it must espouse a universal superhuman order that is true always and everywhere. Second, it must insist on spreading this belief to everyone. In other words, it must be universal and missionary. The best known religions of history, such as Islam and Buddhism, are universal and missionary. The majority of ancient religions were local and exclusive. Their followers believed in local deities and spirits, and had no interest in converting the entire human race. The universal appeal may not have, at the start, motivated a conquer-the-world mentality amongst non-Africans, but it undoubtedly contributed deeply to its vigor, sustainability, persistence, and justification. We see this clearly with the Abyssinian adoption of Christianity and the Moorish adoption of Islam. However, indigenous African religions in West and Central Africa are ethnically idiosyncratic, meaning they are concerned more with a local reality. A divine urgence to convert others was non-existent. Now, of course, my theory has several weaknesses. I'm uncomfortable relying too heavily on sweeping generalizations. For example, utilizing the philosophical idea that Africans conceptualize power with proximity to divinity. This may hold weight in West and Central Africa amongst Niger-Congo speaking cultures, but can this apply to the entire continent? Likely not. Also, just because West Africa has an extensive history of robust gold deposits valuable to the world does not mean this apply to the entire continent. Again, an awkward reliance on monolithic continuity. These weaknesses are only ameliorated if we accept the notion that all of Africa need not apply. I can't pretend that other weaknesses don't exist, but the ones mentioned proved most noticeable. That being said, I think I've found a way to address the sweeping generalization problem. African diversity was the biggest barrier of any African people adopting a conquer-the-world culture. I can get into this argument in another video if you guys are interested. Please let me know in the comments below. I'm really looking forward to what the diaspora has to say. As always, you guys provide some great insight that can help improve my own theory. Well, I'm all out, guys. If you like these videos, you can help in its continued production on patreon.com. The link is in the description box below. Know thyself. Remember your ancestors. Peace.